Hello, and thank you for joining me here on So Stitch Hex. Today, I'm going to be talking about mala beads and Vashikaran magic. The Learn the Dark Mantras of Subjugation by Baal Kadvan. So, I really enjoyed this book. It is really short, as you can see. It's really thin. But it's a really good one. So, it talks about the Vashikaran, which the word Vashikaran comes from the root words Vashi and Karan. Vashi being a lure to entice, to subjugate, or to attract, and Karan meaning the method of doing. In short, it is the method of subjugation. These are mantras. Mantras being man and tra. Man being mind and tra being instrument. These are instruments of the mind used as almost like spells to produce a specific outcome. In this case, it seems to be a definition of creation magic. The first mantra being which is a primordial mantra, which was used by the divine to create the universe. And this mantra usually starts most other mantras because it charges it with power, similar to that original creation magic. I did not almost fall. Yeah. And this primordial mantra was heard by the ancient gurus who were said to be able to hear the in creation. I don't know if this was because it is a quieter, simpler time, there are less distractions, or because of their good training. I think it's a combination of the two, but also the idea that they are closer to the point of creation and there is less to distract them. So, like this dual idea. But if you think of time as being linear, that everything happens in sequence, that would make sense. I'm thinking that maybe everything is happening simultaneously at the same time, and that we just perceive it as a linear aspect to better understand it. So the idea here is that anyone should be able to hear the creation of the universe, because the sound is always being made, because the universe is constantly being created and destroyed. So in here, this book defines how a really cool concept. They're bringing up modern quantum physics and how it backs the idea of string theory. The theory suggests that the very core of the universe is composed of strings that vibrate at a certain frequency. We are not talking atoms, but subatoms, the core of it all, the core vibratory energies of all there is and will ever be. The original mantras were composed in Sanskrit. Sanskrit letters contain energetic principles which, when pronounced, produce changes in the surrounding energy field. The first mantras ever composed can be found in the Vedas. The Vedas are the most sacred texts of the Hindu faith, and some would say the most ancient texts known to man. They are, for example, some other things brought up. In mysterious Hindu tantric traditions, the mantra itself contains the very essence of a god or goddess. It's the very name of a deity. And when recited, they invoke the power of that deity. So they bring up this, and they talk about how God is not all good and the devil is not all bad. This is brought up in chapter 2, which I think is the best chapter. I love this one. They say, the linear simplification is by far the most foolish idea that plagues the magical community and religionists in general. Life is never linear, so why do we suppose that the divine realms are linear as well? The human mind hates contradictory or ambiguous ideas, and so we compartmentalize it to be linear as black and white. In reality, however, nothing is linear and everything is from the divine. Yes, even the so-called demons. As the Kabbalah says, the devil is simply God's shadow. Even in the Bible, God is specifically clear on this. Isaiah 45:7, I form the light and create the darkness. I bring peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. It's right there, but it's become a spiritual blind spot to think that God is all good. He is not. And one of my friends actually showed me all the war quotes in the Bible, and that was kind of fun. So you can have a good goddess act in an evil way. It's just that we are perceiving it in that way. Wrath is normal. We would equate wrath with evil, but it is not evil, but a form of spiritual equilibrium. And you must have both, on both sides. They talk about here by using how you can use a Vashikaran for good, just as you can use a good mantra in a nefarious way. And I talked about how To me, you could use the Vashikaran for, yes, you're controlling people, but you can use it for therapy, for quitting bad habits, for study, protection. Taking someone's fate or decisions into your own hands, which, although taking away the potential of, disconnecting the subjected person from exercising their own free will, you can also be stopping them from making a mistake. This would be taking their fate into your hands, which is not fair, but there's a lot of things that aren't fair, so. And here, I thought of the idea of, with this idea, mantras will not make sense and may produce an unfounded fear. To me, I wanted to know what the fear was of. What do we fear in this idea of the mantra? Do we fear destruction, chaos, pain, the unknown, the uncontrollable? Or do we fear our own true intent coming through in the mantras? Do we really have a good intent, or is it really negative, as the Vashikaran would suggest it might be? Now, how do you use these mantras? Which it lists multiple. And I'm going to go over one or two that I really liked. Or at least concepts that I thought were interesting and how they tied into some other ideas that I've had. So the mantras would be read, or recited rather, with mala beads. Mala beads being the Sanskrit of meditation, garland, coming from the Japanese meditation word japa, to recite. So these beads would have 109 beads. The 109th, which is the big one, some of them are all the same size, but mine, it's this one on the very end, which is slightly bigger than the rest. It's kind of as big as these, but they're different sizes. The 109th is the guru bead, which represents this idea of the master and the student. And it represents the idea of the master having given the student the mantra to recite, and this idea of that higher understanding. It also represents the idea of the leader or the god. And the other beads will be where you recite the mantras. The 108 beads are where you recite them. Each one is the mantra repeated unto itself. The mala beads will be held between the middle and index finger as you recite and move along each one. The traditional craft of the mala beads would be to overhand knot them, which makes it stronger, and the tassel is where all the strings come together. And this is the idea of oneness, the idea of connection to the divine. So with this understanding of what the mala beads are, how do they represent other types of prayer beads? Well, with other beads, you have the rosary, which you would pray on the crucifix, the Apostles' Creed, and actually have my rosary with me. It is attached. Here it is. It's like a blue. It's like a navy blue. And it came to me. It didn't fall. I'm balancing on those rocks we saw the other day because I really like it over here, but standing in one place is kind of hard. It's more of a moving meditative spot or a sitting. You can't really stand, but it's fun. It's fun. So with the rosary, which would be a garland of roses or crown of roses, as it were, which should never be worn, but it is the idea of praying on the cross as the Apostles' Creed. The large bead is where you would do the All Fathers. The smaller beads are the Hail Marys, and the chain is the Glory bead. And this is where you meditate the principal events and mysteries of history. This is different than a witch's ladder, which I will briefly mention in a moment. This is the non-specific denomination kind of prayer sort of meditative tool. It is just to help you get the numbers. Both of these items are used in a numerical sense to help you keep track. For this, you want to reach 10,000 repetitions or recitations of the mantras. You want to recite it 10,000 times because that is the number for you to reach Vidchi. That's how you pronounce it. Vidchi. Which is when you have mastered that mantra. It means you can call on that power at any time that you want, and then you have it down. They recommend doing it 108 times over the course of in one sitting, and doing the 10,000 over the course of 40 days. That is a recommendation. Why 108? This has to do with the multiple names of God, and has to do with this one figure and their 108 servants, them being, of course, the guru bead. So with this, I really enjoyed this book. The part I really enjoyed the most is each of the mantras and how they have them. So there's a mantra to control anyone using water. And the way it states is the mantra might seem a bit odd since it involves enchanting water and having the person you want to drink it. It can be other liquids as well, such as coffee. Recite this mantra as many times as you can, preferably 108 times over the water. Does it have to be physically standing over it? I wonder, does it have to be in your proximity, or can it be like distance Reiki where you send it from far away? Could it be the idea of it's in a vending machine and you are sending it to that vending machine knowing they're going to get one of them, and the intent is enough to drive it? That's what I wonder. So intent seems to be the driving force, but some of this seems to be based off proximity, so I'm not entirely certain. Can it be a non-water based substance that someone is going to be drinking for some reason? Or could it be in a pool that you know is going to be ingested in some way, or something like a bath which will drench them and be absorbed through the skin? These are questions I had that are not answered. I really like how the mantra to attract a sexual partner, using it with the mantra to attract everything, like spiritual beings. Because I read on a Reddit the other day the idea that someone was trying to attract a succubus to them, and I wondered if you could combine these two mantras to attract a succubus. And I wondered if some of these, which are for specific people and you're supposed to list the name, if you could just leave out the name and attract a specific type of person, with your intent being the driving force. Another thing that I was interested in is it compels people to your will. Can it be used with spirits like necromancy, or does it have to be people? Can it be used to control a spirit and reanimate them as they force to bring someone back to life? So with this idea of these mantras to control others, I had the idea to also create your own mala beads by using beads that each bead is made or carved yourself with the intent or with a specific type of mantra recited over it, and then the beads you would use in the overall mala bead, reciting it on each of them after they've been put together. So it's in the process of being built into it, and the idea of cord or not magic. The idea of like the witch's ladder, but with your mala beads instead of a prayer bead or the actual witch's ladder. So what is this, and why did I bring it up? Well, the idea of these beads is what's so important to, meditate on, to help you keep track of the numbers and to help you concentrate. So you have a physical thing to concentrate on as well as your mental state. With this, I thought, well, what happens if we use a witch's ladder? Witch's ladder is a folk magic practice, kind of like a witch's rosary, also called rope and feathers. A witch's ladder, you are tying knots, typically in groups of 3, 9, 13, or 40. 40 is a more modern concept, but you're tying them and chanting spoken encouragements to the talisman to do the spell or bidding of your choice, kind of like the Icelandic bear or sending, it sounds like to me. But you would use these for the magic to be stored in the knots. This idea of making your mala beads yourself and storing your mantras and magic in the knots as you create it to enchant it and make it stronger, or by using beads that are like an evil eye to increase your power and to protect you as you use it. This is the concept I had that brought up while I was reading this, just because it seemed like an interesting idea, since a lot of these are different. Like one of them, that it wants you to cease fighting between spouses. What it describes is that the problems just disappear. But where do they go? Do they just throw it under the rug? Like, the problems are still there. I want to know where they went. What are they doing now? I want to know, how did they solve them, because they did nothing to solve them. So the idea here is that the problems went nowhere. Nothing changed. They're just controlling someone else. And I think that realistically, somebody should work on that. Like, they could have put in a mantra for the creation of quarreling between couples instead of the alleviation of quarreling. Because in this case, they're just controlling them to agree with the other person, or making the problem not exist, even though it will obviously exist. And they could just use it for therapy or something else. You can use your mala beads to learn these mantras, but you can also use them in other forms of meditation, using the numbers to count. I've used them to pray to deities, where I use each one as a different thing I am thankful of or grateful for, and I kiss each bead as I go around. Now, I like to wear mine when I want to feel a certain way. I've worn mine when my house burned down. I wore it to work for like a week, and actually had someone bitch at me like, how dare you wear that? And I'm like, I can wear it however I want to. And then they were like, well, it comes from my people, and I can tell you how it is. That's so disrespectful. And I'm like, I walked away because I'm like, fuck you, bitch. My altar is separated from me in like 5 different people's houses. I can't even find my offering bowl. But here I am. I'm wearing the one thing that I can wear anywhere that no one will question generally or bother me about, because this makes me feel at peace. I've actually worn another mala necklace that was someone else's for a moment because they thought it would help ground me. Theirs was blessed by a priestess that they knew, and I actually found theirs to be very stifling, almost choking. It felt very uncomfortable to wear. It made me feel like I was trapped, like I was wearing a collar attached to a runner. It was like very bad. This one, it still feels safe, and like I don't have to worry about getting lost or straying too far from where I should be spiritually, I guess, or physically. I'm not entirely certain, maybe astrally. It feels like I'm safer, kind of like I'm wearing a shock collar in a electric fence, and I have all the freedom, or the idea of freedom, because I don't know where the fence is. It's an invisible fence. And I guess it feels better to me. It feels freer, and it feels more right. And I really went around and I felt each of the stones that the different mala beads were made of. I looked at so many until I found one that felt right to practice the different mantras on. Now, I guess you might be wondering why I have this kind of a book. Well, I had some crazy person passively, not directly, but passively accuse me of compelling them. And it's like, no, excuse you. But if you're going to accuse me of something, I want to at least know more about it. So I got a whole bunch of books on this, because I'm going to learn everything I can on the subject so I can prove you wrong. Or so I can at least know what you're accusing me of, you know? Alright, so this has been Sosit Checks in a review of Vashikaran Magic, Learn the Dark Mantras of Subjugation by Kadman, and the idea of mala beads, as well as a brief overview of prayer beads or rosaries and the witch's ladder. Alright, hope to see you later. Bye!